All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Garrett Bergquist, government reporter for Wish TV and the producer of All Indiana Politics. Voters in Indiana's 6th Congressional District will pick a new member of Congress this fall. Congressman Greg Pence is not seeking another term. The 6th District runs from southern Indianapolis to the Ohio state line. 3 people are running to succeed Pence, and you might recognize their names. Republican Jefferson Shreve ran unsuccessfully for mayor of Indianapolis last year. Democrat Cinde Wirth ran against Pence 2 years ago, and Libertarian James Sceniak ran for the Senate in 2022. I sat down with Wirth to discuss her reasons for running. Let's bring in the Democratic candidate for the 6th Congressional District, Cinde Wirth. Cinde, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Why are you running for Congress?
So I was a high school teacher for about 10 years, and what I saw in my high school classroom with my students' families were solutions that could be addressed from the federal level, and things like living wages and parents not having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So those are some of the reasons why I decided to run for Congress.
The economy is playing a big role in this election, especially with inflation and the cost of housing. How do you plan to address those 2 issues?
So I think inflation is a complex piece, but overall, when we look at the economy, we need to look at are corporations price gouging, or are they really being true to their consumers? And I think that's a big part of the economy and what we're seeing today in inflation. And the housing piece that we have right now is we have people coming in and using housing stock to make massive amounts of profit for themselves, but leaving people unable to afford rent or purchasing houses.
So how do you plan to address that?
So I think there are things that we can do at the federal level. There are some first-time home buyer incentives that we can use to ease the burden of people trying to buy their first houses. And these are programs that were also in place back in the late 80s and early 90s. So some of those, I think we could see a return of those, and I would definitely advocate for those. On the price gouging for consumers, I think we need to hold companies responsible for that. And there are various pieces of legislation that are antitrust and pro-competition that I think when we put some strength and some teeth into those, we can really help protect consumers.
You called for raising the minimum wage. You've also called for paid family leave. Are there any specific numbers you're looking for?
I think that when we attach specific numbers to there, when we're looking across the nation, there are different numbers that we need depending on where we are in the country. So I think it needs to be a livable wage for wherever we are in the country. And I think that can depend, because a livable wage in Indiana might be significantly different from what a livable wage is in Southern California.
How would the federal government be able to do that, though, if, as you just mentioned, a living wage for Indiana is different from California?
So I think the federal government does have a role to play in that we have incentives, we have some pieces of legislation that we can put into place that holds companies responsible for what they pay their workers and how they pay their workers. That includes pieces of corporate compensation packages for CEOs and other high-level executives. And I think, when we look at if we're paying people a living wage, that's something that the federal government can take a stand on. One way we can do that is through promoting strong unions. And that's something that we have lost across the nation, is our strong unions.
How do you ensure that those costs don't get passed on to consumers?
I think, again, we need to hold those corporations responsible. So corporations have responsibility to shareholders, but they also have responsibility to consumers. And in the last couple of decades, we've really lost that piece.
On your campaign website, you call for incentivizing local community health care options. What specifically are you looking for there?
So we've lost a lot of our local our local public hospitals. A lot of healthcare has been privatized. And when we lose those local healthcare solutions, our rural areas, and in some cases even our suburban areas and some urban areas, have lost healthcare to where we don't have maternal health care available in many areas of Indiana.
What's your plan for the southern border?
So we have a border package bill that was a good bipartisan bill that was put forth this spring. And I uphold all of the things that were in that, and I would vote for that and support that 100%. That was shot down for purely political reasons. And I think playing political games with people's lives is wrong. And when I'm in Congress, I won't do that. I will vote for people and not just toe a party line or whatever line to play political football.
What about the legal immigration system?
So we know that the legal immigration system has some issues and it needs to be retooled. And part of that border package addressed that. It gave money for more agents. It gave money for streamlining the legal system. And one of the things that we can't forget is we have a lot of dreamers in the United States. People who were brought here as children, who have grown up here and this is their home. And we need a valid pathway for citizenship for them because they are integral to our communities. We know that. We know without them, our communities and our workforce would be in trouble. And we need to find good ways to support them.
We had another school shooting this fall, this time at a high school in Georgia. How should Congress address that issue?
So as a teacher, I've been one of those teachers to shepherd my students through those run, hide, fight drills. And in an active shooter scenario when we had a gunman a couple doors down at a bank. So that is an issue that absolutely needs to be addressed at the federal level with more rigorous background checks, more legislation that's common sense, not taking anyone's guns away, but making it more difficult for people who don't need to have weapons, especially high-capacity magazine weapons, to be able to get them easily. When the military locks their weapons down, but we don't, I think that's an issue. And I'm not against guns. I grew up hunting. I grew up with guns in the house. And I think gun safety is one of the biggest things that we're missing right now. And part of gun safety is making sure that the people who are in possession of guns are able to use them appropriately, and I think those gun safety background checks are a big part of that.
Our national debt is now at $35 trillion and climbing. What's your plan to get that under control?
So, I mean, the national debt is something that is of great concern because I think it puts us a little bit at risk internationally. But one of the things that we're not doing is taxing everybody appropriately, excuse me, and putting a tax on the top 1% and people who are making salaries of over $400,000 and taxing them appropriately, I think is one of the best ways that we can achieve that.
Let's turn to foreign policy for a moment. Should the United States continue providing military aid to Ukraine?
Absolutely. I think supporting our allies to promote democracy and defend democracy across the world is one of our responsibilities from the United States. And I think without our help, we would have seen Ukraine not do as well as they are doing. And I think we do need to keep taking a firm stand against aggression toward our allies.
How about Israel?
Again, I think every country has the right to defend themselves. When you look at defending yourself, you also have to consider that there may be a humanitarian piece to that on the other side. So I think when innocent civilians are targeted, I think that is wrong and that needs to be stopped. We do need to advocate for peace, first of all. And in Israel, I think we need a two-state solution. at least between Israel and Palestine. And the release of the hostages is integral to that.
We've talked a lot about national level policy issues so far. Is there anything specific to the 6th district that you would like to work on if you got elected to Congress?
There are several things, yes. I think our rural areas have been often left behind, as have our suburban areas. And I think putting investments in those in the form of educational opportunities for students. From the federal level, the Department of Education advocates for all students to be able to have a free, non-sectarian public education, and that's the bedrock of our democracy. And through that Department of Education at the federal level, we have those Title I funds, and those Title I funds are distributed to low-income students in schools. And that's vitally important to educating all of our children across the 6th district. Women need to be able to be in control of their own bodies. The legislators and government have no business in exam rooms or part of healthcare decisions, and I think that needs to be put into effect. And I think preserving Social Security and Medicare is also a top priority. We have so many seniors across the 6th district that are reaching out to us saying, we are worried about Social Security because it is on the chopping block with the Project 2025. And folks are worried about it, and they are rightly so worried about it. Currently, we do have a bill on the House floor by Representative Larson in Connecticut, which is a bipartisan preservation for Social Security that makes a lot of sense, and it helps a lot of people. And again, that's my focus, is to help people across the 6th district.
What makes you the best choice in this race?
I have experience. I spent time on Capitol Hill as a fellow and wrote a bill that I wrote originally that was passed into law. So I know the process. I know how to collect bipartisan support for bills. I know how to hold people accountable when they're not doing the job. So if somebody is putting a stick in the gears and making things grind to a halt, I think that's ineffective and wrong and not what we need to be doing. We need to work on compromise and collaboration. I'm the right person for that. As a teacher, that's one of the things I taught. I'm also a scientist, so all of the energy pieces that'll be coming down, I've worked in alternative energy for a number of years, and I think there's so many solutions that can help the 6th district, and I know about a lot of those. And if there are people out there who say, I just am not sure about who I've been voting for the last few times, give us a shout out, reach out and let us know. We're hearing from people every day, and we get back with you within a day or so. So reach out. We have nothing to hide, and I'm always available. So if anybody has questions.
Cinde Wirth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
That was Cinde Wirth, Democratic candidate for Indiana's 6th Congressional District. Remember, you can catch All Indiana Politics every Sunday morning at 9:30, only on Wish TV. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Thanks for listening.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.